There's a standard recording contract that tells you more about the music business than any biography ever written. Buried in the fine print, somewhere between the sub-clauses about publishing splits, recoupable advances, and whether your royalties flow through BMI or ASCAP, is the real story of how country music made fortunes for almost everyone except the people whose names were on the records. These are 10 more of those people. Each of them sold millions. Each of them topped charts and packed venues and had their faces on magazine covers. And each of them died with almost nothing, not because they were careless, but because the contract said so. Number 10. Don Gibson. Don Gibson wrote 2 songs on the same afternoon. Oh, Lonesome Me and I Can't Stop Loving You. He was broke, behind on rent, and desperate. So he signed the publishing rights away for far less than they were worth, rights that determined what he'd collect every time those songs played on radio, on jukeboxes, anywhere. Both songs went to number 1 for him. Then, Ray Charles recorded I Can't Stop Loving You in 1962, and it became one of the best-selling pop singles in history. Gibson watched the royalties flow right past him, straight to the publishing house that owned the rights he'd signed away on a bad afternoon. He died in 2003. The song still earns. He didn't live to see much of it. Number 9. Slim Whitman. By some measures, Slim Whitman was one of the best-selling recording artists who ever lived. Over 120 million records sold worldwide. A bigger live draw in the United Kingdom and Ireland in the 1950s than Elvis. His Imperial Records deal, signed in 1949, gave him a royalty rate that was standard for the era and catastrophic in hindsight, fractions of a cent per record, with the label owning the masters and the publishing outright. When the hits dried up, so did the income. The catalog that kept selling around the world didn't belong to Whitman. It never had. He spent his later years doing television infomercials and direct mail album campaigns. He died in 2013 in modest circumstances in Florida, 120 million records away from the life those numbers should have bought him. Number 8. Webb Pierce. Webb Pierce had more number 1 country hits in the 1950s than Hank Williams. More than Eddie Arnold. More than anyone. He was country music's biggest star for the better part of a decade. He spent like it too: the guitar-shaped swimming pool, the silver dollar upholstery in his car, the nudie suits. But the spending wasn't his only problem. His Decca Records contract, like most deals of the era, paid royalties on 90% of sales. The label kept 10% as a breakage allowance, a formal industry clause, a holdover from the days when shellac records shattered in transit. That breakage allowance clause was still in every contract decades later, long after shellac was gone. By the time Pierce died in 1991, the pool had been drained and the mansion sold. The catalog that had made Decca millions belonged to the label's successors, not to him. Number 7. Lefty Frizzell. In 1951, Lefty Frizzell did something no artist had done before. He placed 4 songs simultaneously in the Billboard Country Top 10. 4 songs. At once. The Beatles mirrored that same achievement 13 years later, and people still talk about the Beatles. Frizzell's Columbia Records deal, signed when he was 22 and desperate, returned almost nothing per sale after the label recouped its recording costs. He was also an alcoholic, which made renegotiating almost impossible and kept him dependent on advances he could never earn back. A cycle of cross-collateralization that the label could sustain and he could not. He had one more number 1, Saginaw, Michigan, in 1964, and then the charts stopped calling. He died of a stroke in 1975 at 47 years old. His sound lived on in George Jones, Merle Haggard, and Willie Nelson. None of them paid him royalties for it. Number 6. Roger Miller. Roger Miller won 11 Grammy Awards in a single year. 1965. 11. More than any country artist before or since in a single ceremony. King of the Road. Dang me. He was the most decorated man in Nashville, and he was broke. Miller spent money with the same reckless creativity he brought to songwriting. In 1985, he mortgaged his publishing catalog, the songs that had won those 11 Grammys, to finance Big River, his Broadway musical adaptation of Huckleberry Finn. The show won 7 Tony Awards. It did not make him wealthy. He died of lung cancer in 1992, owing more than he owned. His most valuable asset, that catalog of award-winning songs, was pledged against a debt he never fully cleared. Number 5. Faron Young. Faron Young didn't just have a music career. He built an empire, a booking agency, a country music fan magazine, a publishing company, real estate, a raceway. He was the hillbilly heartthrob, the man who gave Willie Nelson his first real break by recording Hello Walls when nobody else would touch it. Then Nashville changed. New traditionalism arrived and his sound got pushed aside. The businesses declined. The drinking got worse. When he died in December of 1996, he left a suicide note. He didn't mention money in it. He mentioned being forgotten. By then, for Faron Young, those two things had become exactly the same. Number 4. Tammy Wynette. Stand By Your Man is one of the best-selling country singles ever recorded. Tammy Wynette cut it in 1968 under a deal with Epic Records that gave the label ownership of the masters and a substantial share of the publishing. The royalty rate she received per sale would be considered exploitative today. By the 1990s, she was in serious financial difficulty, chronic health problems, mounting medical bills, and a career that had slowed. When she died in 1998, her estate was tangled in debt. Her daughters went to court alleging that her 5th husband, who had also managed her career, had exercised improper control over her finances. The legal dispute outlasted her by years. The song kept earning. The estate did not. Number 3. Jerry Lee Lewis. Jerry Lee Lewis signed with Sun Records in 1956. The royalty rate Sun Records founder Sam Phillips offered was standard for the era. Great Balls of Fire sold over 5 million copies in its first year. Lewis received almost none of it. When he rebuilt his career as a country artist in the late 1960s, his Mercury Records deal was only marginally better. The IRS came for him in the 70s, seizing property and garnishing income. In 1988, they handed him a bill for nearly $2 million in back taxes. He filed for bankruptcy. He died in October of 2022, one of the most recorded and least compensated artists in the history of American music. Number 2. Porter Wagoner. Porter Wagoner launched the career of Dolly Parton. He spent 20 years hosting one of the most widely watched country television programs in America. And he paid for almost all of it himself: his band's wages, his production costs, his legendary nudie suits, which ran to tens of thousands of dollars each, because that was the deal. The show made RCA a fortune in syndication and album sales. It cost Wagoner most of what he earned. In 2006, 1 year before his death, he filed for bankruptcy. He was 80 years old. He died in 2007, inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame, which costs nothing to be part of, and nearly broke, which costs everything. Number 1. Dottie West. In 1980, a Nashville accountant failed to properly remit tax payments to the IRS on behalf of several artists he managed. The other artists discovered the problem and paid what they owed. Dottie West chose a 10-year payment plan. She didn't complete it. By 1990, she owed more than $1 million in back taxes. Her mansion was foreclosed. Her personal belongings, furniture, clothing, jewelry, were publicly auctioned by the IRS during Country Music Fanfare 1991. While her fans walked past the tables outside, West was there. She signed autographs. She kept performing. On the 30th of August, 1991, she was on her way to the Grand Ole Opry when the car she was riding in, a car that Kenny Rogers had quietly given her after hers was repossessed, crashed on a Nashville exit ramp. She died of her injuries 5 days later. She was 58 years old. She was riding to work. The car was not hers. 10 legends, 10 contracts, 10 different versions of the same agreement, that the music would be worth more than the person who made it. If this channel is how you found out about some of these names, that's exactly why we're here. Subscribe, and we'll keep pulling the stories of country music history that Nashville was happy to leave buried.